Southern California, good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Today we have ourselves a jam-packed show as we have a lot to get into in the world of Southern California sports, such as the Chargers. Hey, they actually won a meaningful game. They won on primetime against the Miami Dolphins. Now can they do the same against the Tennessee Titans to improve their playoff chances? And the Rams play the Green Bay Packers on Monday to keep their slim playoff hopes alive. But a loss pretty much puts the nail in the coffin for them as they are running on fumes in terms of their playoff hopes. Also, it looks like the Lakers have come crashing back down to earth. They were entertaining for a little while, but now they are back to being the same old sucky Lakers. And the Clippers have been a little up and down as well, as Kawhi Leonard is back. Paul George, he's still doing his thing, but the Clippers aren't where they really want. Also, St.John Bosco shut out San Mateo, Serra, 45-0, as they are the CIF Open Division State Champion. Are they the national champions, though? All that and more here on SoCal Supreme Sports Show. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome all to another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Friday afternoon, Friday morning, Friday wherever you are listening from. Either way, you have made your way into episode 115 of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Without any further delay, let's begin. But first and foremost, the SoCal Supreme Sports Show would not be where it's at without IE Sports Radio providing the platform. You can follow IE Sports Radio on several different social media platforms such as Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok at IE Sports Radio. You can also follow them on Facebook, if you still use it, by typing in the word IE, then sports, then radio in the search bar. IE Sports Radio also has a website, www.iesportsradio.com, and when you go there, you will see a Patreon link at the top, which starts at $5 a month. This will get you a shout from all of our shows, including this one, and higher tiers include IE Sports Radio merchandise, access to ISRU, the podcasting university of IE Sports Radio, and even a chance to be featured on a segment of our flagship show, The Defining Moment with Larry B. For the past 8.5 years and counting, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. All the while, we've been continuing to be by the fans and for the fans. With your help, we are ready to take the next biggest step. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. Shout out to our Patreon supporters, Bay Area Raised Apparel, Key to the Gate, Marcus Lowstreet, and a donor that wishes to remain anonymous. And with all that said and done, let us begin. So we'll start off with the Chargers as basically, I got to actually make a correction on what I said last week. So I said the Rams play the Denver Broncos this week. That was a mistake. They play the Green Bay Packers this Monday on Monday Night Football. So I just got to clarify that mistake. I'm sorry, but that was my mistake. I forgot about the Packers. It's just that they've been so irrelevant this season, and big yikes on their season. But more on that later. So to the Chargers. Okay, so the Chargers finally actually won a statement game. I think this might have been their biggest win of the season. Biggest and best win of the season, though Austin Eckler kind of says otherwise. But either way, they beat the Miami Dolphins on primetime 23-17, which was a huge win. The defense was what really stepped up for the Chargers. With how much they've been banged up, with J.C. Jackson being out, the Chargers also didn't have Derwin James going in. They also didn't have Bryce Callahan, one of their corners. They also were still without Joey Bosa, who probably is not going to be playing this week, but I can imagine he'll be playing next week. And then a few other guys on the defensive front. But for them to only hold Miami to 17 points is quite amazing. And honestly, as much as I've bashed the defense for being bad and trashy, I really thought that the Chargers stepped up. And this was a game they needed to win. As we welcome Marcus Low's Great in the chat room. He says, salute to my brother. I appreciate you popping in and saluting me. Salute to you, Marcus Low's Great, my brother. So back to the Chargers. Yeah, it was a big win for the Chargers. It wasn't the flashiest game, but it really showed that they still have some gas left in the tank. And if they had lost this would have been detrimental to their playoff hopes. But now their playoff hopes have risen quite significantly. They still have a little ways to go to punch their ticket into the playoffs, and they're not in the playoff race at the moment. They're actually tied with New England and the Jets for the final playoff spot, the 7th playoff spot. But there is a chance that the Chargers could vastly improve that this week. But going back to the game, again, the defense really kept the Dolphins in check. Keep in mind, this is a Dolphins team that had been sizzling hot for the most part. Yes, they were coming off of a loss to the San Francisco 49ers, but they really kept Tua in check, holding him to only 145 passing yards, 1 touchdown, and he only had 10 completions. Also, the Dolphins only had 4 completions in the fourth quarter. I think it was 4, if not fewer than that, but basically, the Dolphins did not have their way. And other than Tyreek Hill, I was surprised the Dolphins didn't really go to the run game all that much, just because that has been the Chargers' Achilles heel in stopping run defenses. So, for the Dolphins, I don't know what they were thinking. And I'll give them credit. They put a lot of pressure on Justin Herbert as their defense. I don't think their defense is as bad as most people think it is, but it's not as flashy as like the Patriots or the Niners or anything of that sort. So for the Chargers, they were able to win this despite Justin Herbert getting sacked 4 times. I feel he got sacked 5 if it weren't for that roughing the passer penalty. But he threw for 367 yards. He was 39 for 51 in his completions and attempts, and he had 1 touchdown pass, which was pretty good. His 1 touchdown pass came to Mike Williams, who actually came back after missing the previous few games due to an ankle injury, and that was huge right there. Getting Mike Williams back was big time right there. Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are both back, and that just really opens up a whole lot more options for Justin Herbert, and him not having to pass to Joshua Palmer and DeAndre Carter and check it down to Austin Eckler and whatnot. So overall, this game really showed what the Chargers offense can do when most of their receivers are healthy. Keenan Allen almost surpassed the century mark in terms of receiving yards. Mike Williams had 116 receiving yards, including a 55-yard catch, which was straight up phenomenal. Joshua Palmer put in some work. Gerald Everett also put in some work in terms of receiving. So overall, for the Chargers, it was mostly a great game. It was mostly clean for the most part. It did have its scary moments. In the Chargers' last drive, they almost fumbled this. There was almost this fumbled snap where Justin Herbert had to basically pounce on that ball, where if the Chargers don't recover that, then heaven knows what happens. But overall, it was a clean game for the most part. I know there were some iffy ref calls. I think that the reffing on both sides could have been a whole lot better, but the Chargers can't complain considering I had them losing this game last week. I had them losing 35-27, but I could not have been more happy to be wrong, honestly, especially since this was a game where the Chargers needed to win in order to keep their playoff hopes alive. It was also a big win just because it shut Emmanuel Acho's mouth up after he kept calling Justin Herbert a social media quarterback and how he was bantering all over Twitter saying Tua is obviously better than Herbert, and obviously Tua is having a great year, but Justin Herbert is still amongst the elite. Like, the dude is second in passing yards up to this point of the season, and he hasn't even had his top two receivers for the same game. Not just start the game, but complete the game as well. Because the Chargers had Mike Williams and Keenan Allen together in the Seattle game, but they never finished, as well as the Raiders game in Week 1. But both are now back to being fully healthy for the most part, and both are back to being strong as ever, as they're basically the dynamic duo and one of the best receiver duos, and I think it's going to really help out the Chargers a whole lot. So again, this was a crucial win. If the Chargers had lost, they would have been 6-7 and probably seeing their playoff hopes dwindle down. But now this is a big time win for them. And also Austin Eckler had some good moments as well. He had a touchdown run from the 1-yard line, which I thought that was good as well. And he had over 100 scrimmage yards altogether, 100 offensive yards at that. So for the Chargers, it just goes to show that Justin Herbert is not a social media quarterback, and honestly, he is still elite. I mean, the dude has been through a lot. The dude had his ribs blown up against the Chiefs, and he hasn't had his receivers here and there. So for him, I think Justin Herbert gets too much slander, and I think we gotta stop with the slander all that much. I think we all just need to stop with the whole Tua versus Herbert comparisons. And I actually saw this on Twitter from a Dolphins fan. Something that the media does not want to see is that Chargers fans are happy with Justin Herbert, Dolphins fans are happy with Tua Tagovailoa, Bengals fans are happy with Joe Burrow, and Eagles fans are happy with Jalen Hurts. So we need to stop with the comparisons and that everyone is happy with their quarterbacks, and they're all going to be the future of the NFL. So overall, that's basically it for that game. I can't really think of anything else that was big time for the Chargers in that game. I mean, obviously, again, it wasn't the flashiest game, and it certainly wasn't the cleanest game, but this was probably their most complete game win of the season. I mean, yes, they still had that fumble recovery touchdown from the Dolphins that they recovered, and Alohi Gilman, I feel bad for him because he caused a fumble, and I guess he thought that either the Chargers or Dolphins recovered it, and he celebrated a little bit too early, and then the ball conveniently got poked to Tyreek Hill, and for those that don't know, Tyreek Hill is one fast football player, and that's why they call him the Cheetah. So for that to happen and for the Chargers to recover, I'm happy the Chargers were able to basically outwit the Dolphins. Just because the Dolphins, again, they're having such a great year, and this could be the year they get to the playoffs. Hence the word could, though, just because the Dolphins still have a little ways to go when it comes to possibly making it to the postseason. But as for the Chargers, their next game is against the Tennessee Titans on Sunday. It's going to be at SoFi Stadium. So this is the second to last home game of the season, but technically it could be considered the last home game of the season just because they have their inner city matchup against the Rams, which is basically, I wouldn't say a home or away game. It's just a neutral game, but technically the Chargers are the home team. But anyway, for the Titans, this one's going to be a tricky matchup. Now, the Titans have obviously struggled. Ryan Tannehill is not who everyone thinks he is, and the Titans are just coming off of a not-so-good loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And the Titans, currently, they lead the AFC South, but that's kind of where the buck stops, just because, again, the AFC South has just been a complete mess, and overall, for the Titans, I thought they were going to beat the Jaguars. They've had a lot of success over the Jags in the past few or so years, but for the Jags to basically rise to the occasion and unleash that team and keep themselves afloat into the playoff position, or in the playoff race, it speaks to how the Jaguars, I mean, I wouldn't say their win over the Chargers was fluky, but it just didn't help that Justin Herbert was not 100%. His O-line was basically battered and bruised. The defense was porous and whatnot. So overall, for the Jaguars, they're still in playoff contention, but back to the Chargers. The Chargers, they need to win this game against the Titans. Like, if they get past the Titans, that's a huge win just because the remainder of their opponents are all sub 500. Rams and Broncos are guaranteed to have a sub 500 record, and the Colts are basically trending toward being under 500, which that's going to be a Monday Night Football game, by the way. So, anyway, but as for this week against the Titans, here's my thing. The Chargers have to basically slow down Derrick Henry. Sorry, thinking of the tight end, but the Chargers have to slow down Derrick Henry to the best of their ability. I mean, that's kind of their only offensive option. And here's the thing for the Titans. The Titans are going to be missing quite a number of players on their roster, as according to Mike Herndon, the Titans will have 7 starters out on defense on Sunday, plus their left tackle and their wide receiver, which I believe is Trayvon Burks, I want to say. Either way, the Titans, they're going to be down some offensive options, but that does not mean the Chargers are going to basically cruise on into an easy win, especially when the Titans have Derrick Henry, and Derrick Henry can easily go off on the Chargers' hideous run defense. Again, last week was not really indicative of how the Chargers improved their run game. It was just more indicative of the Dolphins being able to pass the ball more to like Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle or any of those other receivers. But for the Titans, I think this one's going to be a tricky matchup. But from what I'm seeing, obviously with those 7 defensive starters out, and obviously with the Titans' bad wide receiver defense, here's my thing. I saw in an article that the Titans now have the worst defense to wide receivers. And again, they let Evan Ingram go off last week. That speaks to high volumes. And Evan Ingram hasn't really, I mean, he's had his flashes this year, but again, this just goes to show that the Titans' defense is being battered and bruised up, kind of like the Chargers. So this would be a great multiple-score win, and I don't think Ryan Tannehill isn't as flashy as he was last year or the year before when the Titans had that run to the AFC Championship. But I really think that this is the Chargers' game to win. And if there is any type of I mean, it's not going to be easy to beat the Titans, especially with Derrick Henry. But if there is ever a game for the Chargers to win by more than one score, it's this one. It would have been even more crazier if the Chargers had beaten the Dolphins on primetime in one-score games. And I have one of my friends said on Twitter, it feels like all the Chargers games this past decade have come down to the final minute. And I basically told him, yeah, they're always one score. And again, I remember watching the last time the Chargers played the Arizona Cardinals. They fell behind 10-0, but scored 41 unanswered points and basically stomped the living daylight out of them. And one commenter said, back when the Chargers used to crush teams by more than one score. So for the Chargers, I definitely have them winning. That's for sure. I think that this win over the Dolphins is a momentum booster. My thing is this. They can't get a bit too big of a head off this win, or off the win over the Dolphins. I think that this could have the potential of being a tricky game, especially since it's basically going to come down to if they could slow down Derrick Henry. Can they slow down Derrick Henry, and can they get to Ryan Tannehill early and often? Because something I did notice was that Kyle Van Noy actually had a sack for the Chargers in the game against the Dolphins, and it was actually the first sack by someone not named Derwin James, Joey Bosa, or Khalil Mack this season, and I'm like, yikes. So the fact that the Chargers need to get more pressure on the opposing quarterback means that the Chargers really have to step up defensively. They have to step up defensively like they did against the Dolphins, which, again, credit to the Dolphins, they didn't give up, but the Dolphins just were not themselves. It could be a West Coast thing, but I don't know. So I have the Chargers winning this week, and I have them winning 28-20. I think that's a respectable score. I still think it'll be in the one-score range, even though I technically don't think 8 points is considered one score, though it technically is because touchdown and then 2-point conversion. But I have the Chargers winning 28-20. I think that this is going to definitely come down to the wire. And again, it's all about trying to outcoach Mike Vrabel. And Mike Vrabel has that mindset where he wants to outcoach you and he wants to do everything in his power to get that win over you. And with Derrick Henry, it just means that the Chargers are going to have to really slow down the run game. They really have to, and they have to make sure they don't have anything else happen in that game where the other team scores a touchdown off of something miscellaneous, whether it's a fumble recovery touchdown or anything of that sort. Either way, the Chargers, they should be in good shape for this week, but they really have to just rise to the occasion. Their playoffs are basically here, and I'm happy that they're starting to get it together. So their final injury report hasn't been released, but I basically talked a little about the Titans and who's out for them. They didn't really name their 7 defensive players that are out, but not having Treyon Burks and that left tackle is huge for the Titans offense. And not having 7 defenders, which I imagine might be Christian Fulton, is also big for the Chargers right there as well. It's big for the Titans as well. So for me, the Chargers just have to take care of their side of the ball, and they can't afford to basically not rise to the occasion, because this is where their playoffs have pretty much started. And through Thursday, we didn't get to see C.J. Board, Treyon Burks, Nate Davis, Christian Fulton, Dontrell Hilliard, Amari Hooker, and Jeffrey Simmons practice. And Derrick Henry didn't practice the past couple days, but that was not injury related. So it's just basically rest. So especially since he's had to pretty much carry the team throughout the past few weeks, but I digress. Meanwhile, the Chargers' only DNP is Derwin James. Now, I really want Derwin James to be healthy, and I'm hearing that it's more than just a little bit of a quadricep sprain. I'm hoping it's not an IR thing, because the Chargers can't afford to have him on IR. Otherwise, that's kind of the heartbeat of their defense. And it doesn't help that they don't have Joey Bosa, and we don't have his timetable. I'm hearing that he might come back next week. I'm probably going to put my money on next week just because it's a little bit of a longer week, just because they're playing on Monday Night Football, and that would be helpful to give him one more extra day to possibly come back and get his sea legs there. But I have the Chargers winning 28-20, and I really think that this is the Chargers' chance to swing while the iron's hot. Ryan Tannehill did have an ankle injury where he was limited on Wednesday, but then fully practiced on Thursday. So again, I think the Tannehill's not the major problem. It's Derrick Henry I'm concerned about. And if the Chargers don't contain him, then he's going to run for 200 yards and make the Chargers' run defense look like torn gift wrap. But that's basically it for the Chargers portion of the show. Let's jump on over to the Rams. So this week, the Rams, they just came back from a win against Raiders! Sorry, I had to do that. But the Rams beat the Raiders last week on Thursday Night Football, as this week they play on Monday Night Football against the Green Bay Packers. What looks like what has playoff implications now is basically down to just 2 teams vastly underachieving and having seasons that they definitely want to forget. And the Rams are basically walking on death's row when it comes to missing the playoffs. They're not mathematically eliminated, but they're very close to being eliminated from playoff contention. And the list of teams that were basically on the verge of being eliminated, which I imagine a loss pretty much does it, are the Rams, Colts, Saints, Cardinals, Steelers, Browns, and Raiders! Sorry, I had to do that. But Yeah, another loss for the Rams pretty much takes them out of the playoff equation. Fortunately for the Rams, they are getting a little bit of help. They did get some help as the Niners beat the Seahawks, which has Seattle's chances of making the playoffs dwindling down even further. So, again, it still isn't a good chance because the Rams, they're still the second worst team in the division behind the Chicago Bears. They're lumped with Arizona and New Orleans for second worst record in the NFL. That speaks to high volumes of how horribly the Rams are. But they've had a lot of injuries, and I imagine Matthew Stafford isn't going to come back. And from what Sean McVay said, he doesn't see a scenario where Cooper Kupp comes back, and for good reason as well. Now, if the Rams do get back into playoff contention, then I can see that being a possibility. And here's my thing for the Rams. They play the Packers, which are vastly underachieving, and then they have the Broncos, which are also underachieving. Then they've got the Chargers, which we know we've already talked about them. And then they've got the Seahawks, which are basically barely treading water when it comes to making the playoffs. Currently, right now, the Giants and the Commanders are both tied for the 6-7 spot in the NFC playoff race, while Seattle is right behind them following that loss to the 49ers last week. Green Bay is not too far away from Seattle, but believe it or not, they're actually below the Detroit Lions. But again, the Rams are going to need to have everything go their way in order to make the postseason. So, again, a loss pretty much eliminates the Rams from playoff contention, but a win basically prolongs their defeat, or prolongs the inevitable. Against the Packers, they're playing at Green Bay, and they're 7-point underdogs, so this is really tough to Now, here's my thing. The Rams, they are going to have to roll with Baker Mayfield. John Wolford is out because of a neck injury or something along those lines. Either way, Baker Mayfield is starting at quarterback, and he has to be the starter going forward. Whether the Rams are in the playoffs or not, the Rams have to roll with Baker going forward, just because you can't put John Wolford back there. John Wolford is no bueno. Bryce Perkins, despite some flashes, he's no bueno. Baker Mayfield is bueno. That dude took the Cleveland Browns to the playoffs, and they won a playoff game on the road against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I don't want to hear anyone saying Baker Mayfield should not be starting. That dude should be starting and literally ending the game, regardless of what anyone says. And again, this is a Baker Mayfield that did not know the playbook and going into this game, and he had only been with the Rams for less than 48 hours. Little less than 48 hours. So I don't see why Baker Mayfield does not get the start. I understand people thought he was going to be rusty. People thought he was going to be dangerous when it comes to his style of play, but this is their guy going forward. And this could be their guy going into the future, depending on what Matthew Stafford decides. But they have to go with Baker Mayfield throughout the rest of the season. Give him reps, let him adjust to Sean McVay's play style, and if there's one guy that could save Baker Mayfield's career, whether as a backup or whether as a starter, it's Sean McVay. Sean McVay has obviously not been the true mastermind of the Rams, but that dude, he is an offensive genius for the most part. I mean, the dude won a Super Bowl, so let's give McVay some credit. So, for this week, however, I really don't want to pick the Packers, but I kind of have to. Here's my thing. The Rams always struggle when it comes to playing at Green Bay. I don't care who's at quarterback no matter who's at quarterback, whether it's Stafford, whether it's Jared Goff, the Rams always struggle when playing the Packers in Green Bay. Now, if it was at SoFi Stadium, I would have maybe given the Rams a boxer's chance. But I got the Packers winning this one. I have them winning 24-21. I think Mason Crosby boots the game-winning field goal, and the Rams just leave too much time on the clock for Aaron Rodgers to make a comeback, and I think that's how the Rams lose. I don't want them to lose. Again, I would never wish too much ill will on the Rams, but I just don't see how they keep up with the Packers. I mean, obviously, this is a Packers team without Devontae Adams, who went to the Raiders. Yes, I'm not going to do it with that voice, but they still have Aaron Jones, who's a fantastic running back. They have A.J. Dillon, who's a decent running back. They also have Alan Lazard and I forget the rookie wide receiver. What is it? Christian Watson, I think his name is, if I'm not mistaken. Either way, I think the Packers still have some good offensive options, and Mike LaFleur does not want to miss the playoffs in his first year. And Aaron Rodgers, depending on what his attitude is going to be, he also doesn't want to miss the playoffs as well. I mean, especially since this could be his last year in the NFL. Like, he's got to pretty much just call it a career at this point. But for the Rams, they're basically treading on literally fumes in terms of trying to make the playoffs. But again, I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be back and forth. Both teams are going to just trade blows. And then eventually, we're going to see Mason Crosby kick the game-winning field goal off of the scripted Aaron Rodgers comeback deal. Like, the Packers still are in contention for the NFC North title, which, actually, no, they're not. Are they? They're 5-8, and they have this game, and then they have next week, and then... No, they can't win the NFC North. So the Packers can't win the NFC North, even if the Vikings lose out and the Packers win out. So, yeah. Packers can't win the NFC North. Surprisingly, the Lions still can, but I digress. But for this week, I got the Rams losing this one, 24-21. I will gladly own up to this, and I will gladly eat my crow if the Rams somehow pull this off. But they always struggle at Lambeau Field. They always find ways to lose at Lambeau Field. And Aaron Rodgers, there's something about Aaron Rodgers that just literally brings out the best in him. And yes, it is Christian Watson, the rookie wide receiver who has a mere 401 receiving yards, but it's not mere. Don't say that they're mere in front of Packers fans. I'm just saying, y'all. So yeah, Packers will be taking that one, in my opinion. But again, I'll own up to it if, hence the word if the Rams somehow pull off the win in Green Bay. But again, the Rams are basically just walking on a shallow grave at this point when it comes to making the playoffs. The only way they make the playoffs is if Washington and the Giants tie, which, I mean, based on how both those two are evenly matched in a bad way, I mean, there's that. And then you also have to have the Lions lose, which they play the Jets, which have postseason aspirations. Then you also have to have the Panthers and Falcons lose, and then the Cardinals lost Kyler Murray. So basically, the Rams need to have a lot go their way to make the playoffs. I mean, they're not even going to have a winning record. So if they somehow sneak into the playoffs without a winning record, then the Rams are basically the NFL's miracle team for some weird reason. But I think the Rams' playoff hopes come to an end this week, and they just got to basically sit out. They have to sit out most of their guys. They have to sit out most of their players, and just start Baker Mayfield, and just get like some of the younger guys, like Ben Skoranek and Van Jefferson, and all those other youngins some playing time. And at this point, you just can't rush Aaron Donald back or Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford looks like he's done for the year. And Cooper Kupp, if the Rams miss the playoffs, they cannot just bring him back. So that's pretty much that for the Rams portion and the NFL portion of the show. There is no NCAA football happening. Next week there will be bowl games for San Diego State and soon to be UCLA and USC. So we can jump on into some high school football. So last week we had St.John Bosco taking on San Mateo Serra of San Mateo in the CIF Open Division State Championship. Long story short, Bosco brought out the pimp glove and straight up smacked Serra all over the place as they won 45-0. I was very surprised at this. I didn't think that Serra would get shut out, but Bosco really laid down the wood against Serra. But again, St. John Bosco is just such a great team. They have been battle tested all over the place. They've even gone out of state to compete in some of these games. So, and then obviously beating Mater Dei was the cherry on top. So there's no doubt in my mind, St. John Bosco is the number one team in the nation, and they are the national champion. They started out number one and eventually finished number one. So I don't want to hear anyone saying otherwise. Now, I'm not the biggest St. John Bosco guy. Personally, I'm a Bruce Rawlinson guy, but I gotta give credit where credit's due when it comes to Jason Negro and his team. I really think that the Braves earned it, especially after bouncing back from that loss to Mater Dei in Trinity League play. Again, they came up big on the biggest stage of the season, where basically they basically had to win in the Division I final. And I understand most people don't want to see the private schools do their thing, but again, until that problem gets resolved, we have to basically live with St. John Bosco versus Mater Dei in the Division I final. But overall, it's going to be another national championship for St. John Bosco, unless, of course, I forget the team from Florida's name. I think it's like Central or something along those lines, and I do remember they are playing American Heritage. Allow me to check the Max Preps rankings. But overall, two teams from Florida are basically doing battle with one another, as they're basically going to be doing battle to see who is the best team from Florida. And it's, Central of Miami. There we go. Central of Miami. They are playing American Heritage, which is actually 10th in the nation, while Central is 13th in the nation. Oh, I could already see Central fans clamoring and saying, "We should be the national champion. We're better than St. John Bosco." Well, then maybe you should invite them to, play against them. We'll see, though. Maybe that could happen in the near future. Or maybe you should come down to California to play. Actually, no, I don't think that's allowed. I don't think out-of-state teams can play California teams. At least not to my knowledge. But in terms of, football, of course. Especially with what happened with IMG Academy. But overall, Bosco, for now, is the national champion. I think people could make a claim that Central is willing to overtake Bosco, but Bosco's just too good, man. You can't not tell me they are not a national champion, especially since they play in the toughest league in America, being the Trinity League, and they're playing Mater Dei, for goodness sake. Also, Central narrowly escaped against IMG Academy, which is also a good team. And, yeah, I guess we can make a somewhat of a claim. Central plays American Heritage tonight, but overall I think Bosco has the national championship on lock. So that is going to do it for the football portion of the show. Just wanted to give some kudos to St. John Bosco. Just give them a big shout out, just because Larry B and I kind of forgot to talk about them on 3 and Out College Edition, which is my bad. Or our bad. But that'll probably be the first thing we talk about tomorrow. Speaking of, I actually got to recap one more football thing, and that is the 3C2A Junior College Championship. So the 3C2A, or California Community College Athletic Association, had their state championship football game between Riverside City and San Mateo. And long story short, San Mateo laid down the wood and just spanked Riverside all over the place, winning 55-0. I know Larry B was disappointed as heck about that loss, but it's Riverside came in undefeated. They'd averaged 30-plus points a game, and they were just spanking everybody. Okay, not spanking everybody, but they were winning in mostly convincing fashion. They had a few dramatic games here and there, but Riverside was just a machine. Now, San Mateo does have a good defense, and there were some rainy conditions, but I was very surprised Riverside got shut out. Now I got to do my homework to see when the last time Riverside got shut out in a game. So, yeah. All I know is that the last time there was a shutout in the 3C2A football championship, or football state championship, was when the first time the 3C2A had a state championship in football. So, yeah, Riverside kind of made history in the not-so-best way. And I was very surprised that Riverside just got crushed. And it's nothing against Riverside. Obviously, you have to give credit to San Mateo's stingy defense. But it's like, you have to come up big when it truly matters the most. On that stage of the game, I know it was in Northern California, but you still have to come up big when it truly matters the most. And unless you're playing on muddy field conditions, where you basically have to call out the committee, I don't want to hear the excuses. There's no excuse for not trying, for getting shut out. There's no excuses. At least try to kick a field goal. Oh, I feel bad. I feel bad for the kids on Riverside. Like, that's no way to go out, especially the sophomores. But it is what it is, and this isn't the worst. This is obviously the worst thing to happen to them in their athletic career, but it's not the worst thing to happen to them in their lives. So the sun will come up, which obviously it did. So keep your heads up, Riverside, and congrats, San Mateo, for beating SoCal yet again. Well, not SoCal, beating SoCal in particular, but having a NorCal team beat a SoCal team. So there you go. All right, now we're done with the football stuff. So jumping on over to some NCAA men's basketball. So I'm going to save the Lakers part for the second half of the show, but for NCAA men's volleyball, or not men's volleyball, men's basketball. So USC, they're still doing their thing. They're still doing well when it comes to their games. Unfortunately, fortunately for USC, they beat Long Beach State, my alma mater, 88-78 on Wednesday. That was their only game they had from now all the way up to last week. As last week they beat Cal State Fullerton 64-50, which they could have won. They didn't cover. And in this game against Long Beach State, they didn't cover. I am so sad, USC. I'm just kidding. I didn't put any money on USC. But I'm a little confused at what USC is. USC, I thought they were supposed to be legit when it comes to offense. I guess they didn't get the memo defensively just because they gave up 78 to Long Beach State, and Long Beach State nearly cut the game. They cut the game down to 1. They only trailed 66-65, but then USC kicked in a high gear, and it's kind of been that little bit of a year for Long Beach State. They've had a few heartbreaker losses, but for USC, if I were them, I'd maybe start to improve the defense, just because if they play with that defense against an opponent like UCLA or Arizona or anyone of that sort, they're going to get blown out the gym. I don't care if it's going to be at Galen Center or not. USC has to improve that defense. Anyway, on Sunday, USC will remain at Galen Center to take on Auburn. Now, that's going to be a very tough matchup. However, Auburn was dealt its first loss of the season this past week against Memphis. I really wanted USC to become that first loss, but now it's just going to be me hoping USC could pull off this upset. But for SC, it's going to be tough to beat Auburn. I know it's going to be at Galen Center, but I think it's still going to be a tricky matchup. USC's next matchup following that is against Colorado State, which will be at the Footprint Center in Phoenix, Arizona in the Jerry Colangelo Classic. Then next Friday, I'm sorry. That's it. Next Friday they don't have a game just because they're going to be on winter break. The following Friday, the last Friday of the calendar year, they will play Washington at Washington, which should be an interesting matchup, but we're not going to look that far. All they have to look forward to from now all the way to next week is Auburn versus Colorado State. And they should enjoy playing at Galen Center while they can, just because it's not going to get easy going forward. So you better not disappoint going forward, USC. Otherwise, I will find out, and there will be problems. Anyway, for UCLA, they actually had 2 games spanning from last week's show all the way to today, as UCLA stomped all over Denver 87-64. Then they really laid down the wood against Maryland. That's kind of been my catchphrase of the day, laying down the wood. They stomped all over Maryland. They didn't just win. They crushed Maryland at Maryland 87 to 60. Keep in mind, Maryland is the number 20 team in the nation, and this is going to be one of UCLA's future Big Ten foes. As the UC schools did all vote 11-5 to put UCLA into the Big Ten, which, kudos. But not kudos to the ones that voted against it, but I digress. So, it's a big win for UCLA defeating Maryland on the road. Like, that's not easy to do, especially against a team like that. But for them to do that, that's darn right impressive. Damn good job. Anyway, UCLA returns to action on Saturday at Madison Square Garden against Kentucky in the CBS Sports Classic. Now that's going to be a very good game right there. That's going to be a barn burner. Two blue bloods facing one another. I say they're blue bloods not just because they have the color blue, but they're both elite men's basketball programs. And then next Wednesday, UCLA will head back to Pauley Pavilion to welcome UC Davis, which has kind of has UC Davis. I know UC Davis beat Cal, but I don't think they've beaten any other Pac-12 teams this season. No, they haven't. They haven't even played a whole lot of. They've only played Cal, which we don't need to talk how hideous Cal is this season. And this is no disrespect to them, but Cal is just not good. I'm sorry. Oh, poor Cal. You'll live. You'll survive, hopefully. So that's basically going to do it when it comes to USC and UCLA in terms of men's basketball. I talked a little about how Long Beach State played USC, but let's just say it's not been easy sledding for the Beach, aka my alma mater, and I hope they're able to figure out something soon, but this could be a little bit of I wouldn't say rebuilding year, but a year where they're probably not going to repeat as Big West champions in the terms of the regular season. Now they could make noise in the tournament, but that's a little too far away. We'll see though. I mean, the Big West is improving vastly here and there. UC Irvine's doing good. Santa Barbara is looking solid. Time will tell. So as for San Diego State, they had a little bit of a bumpy road last week. Last Monday they beat Kennesaw State with no real trouble, 88-54. But then last Saturday they lost to St. Mary's, 68-61. Now, obviously, I think St. Mary's is a good program. I think they're a very underrated program. I think they don't get too much love just because Gonzaga is in their conference. But I think that's not too bad of a loss. But for San Diego State, they probably had their chances of winning the Jerry Colangelo Classic. But unfortunately for the Aztecs, they just fell short. And it's back to the drawing board. And sadly, they are not ranked. San Diego State came in ranked number 22. But sadly, that loss kind of bumped them out of the top 25, which sucks. But, what can you do? So San Diego State returns to action on Tuesday against UC San Diego, which I hate to say this about UC San Diego, but they got knocked off. They got their block knocked off against San Diego, the Toreros, 84-58, which that's hideous. But following this week or the next week, San Diego State is back in action when it comes to Mountain West Conference play, which They should be able to win that conference unless Boise State rises to the occasion and Colorado State rises to the occasion. I guess this is a good segue to go into how the Big West is doing in terms of its teams. So Santa Barbara is 7-2, UC Irvine is 7-4, UC Riverside is 6-4, Cal Poly is 5-4. What's their face? Bakersfield is 4-5. Fullerton is 4-6. Long Beach State is 4-6. UC San Diego is 4-6, and CSUN is sadly bringing up the rear in the entire Big West Conference at 2-7. Hang in there, CSUN. You'll survive. I guess it's also worth noting the West Coast Conference and how their teams are doing. The three amigos who Well, I mean, LMU is actually doing pretty decent, as LMU is 8-4, San Diego's 6-5, and Pepperdine is 5-4. However, the latter, Pepperdine and San Diego, are basically second to last in the West Coast Conference. Surprisingly enough, the West Coast Conference has only one team below 500, and that is Pacific. I mean, it's good that there's competitiveness in the West Coast Conference, and it's not just going to be Gonzaga just stomping all over everybody, but once conference play begins, I'm pretty sure Gonzaga's going to lay down the wood and just defeat everybody here and there. So, yeah, hang in there, San Diego and Pepperdine. I know there have been some tough results for you, as San Diego, they lost a tough one to California Baptist. California Baptist, not Cal Baptist. I'm not going to say that wrong. They lost that 76-73, and they also lost to UNLV last week. So, might as well see how the Lancers are doing, as that was actually CBU's previous game, or their last game, winning at San Diego 76-73, which is quite impressive. Not bad. They've won 2 in a row after losing to Cal Poly, which, probably could have gone their way. They're actually one of 5 teams in the WAC, the Western Athletic Conference, that are 7-4. Seattle is 7-2, which is a surprise. Well, I wouldn't say surprise, but it's just an improvement from over the years. And then Sam Houston State is 8-2, which, again, we don't really care for those two. It's all about California Baptist or CBU. That's the proper way of saying the Lancers school name. It's not Cal Baptist, it is California Baptist or CBU. That's what I was told. Anyway, California Baptist is back in action on Sunday when they take on Sonoma State, and then they also have Portland State on Thursday, and then they will jump on into WAC play against Grand Canyon and Seattle. So that's basically the end of the calendar year. So that's basically it for the NCAA men's basketball portion of the show. We'll jump into a little, hence the word a little NCAA women's basketball, as unfortunately USC women's hoops was dealt its first loss of the season, as they lost to UCLA 59-56. Now that's not too bad of a loss, considering USC has not played anyone of significance. I don't even know who half of USC's wins are against. I know they beat San Diego, and I want to say they beat CBU, and they also beat San Jose State and Merrimack. But they haven't beaten anyone of significance. Like, most of their wins are probably against, sub 500 teams. And this is no knock on those teams, but they're just not... They haven't been competitive. They haven't been battle-tested. This was the first-ranked opponent for USC, and the fact that they only lost by 3 is actually pretty good. My only qualm with USC is they made a mistake toward the end of the game. They tried to get an open 3, and then they just kept passing it, and then UCLA stole the ball. The thing about USC is that they actually covered. It was actually a push when it came to the bet line, as UCLA was only a 3-point favorite. So if you had USC, well, you got your money back. Actually, no. Oh, no, that's right. But if you had, it was a push. Basically, USC was +3, so if you had that, then you basically had that. And I'm disappointed by this attendance. Only 3,109 people, which is only 3/10 of the capacity at Galen Center. Sickening! Just my opinion. But at least Caleb Williams and the football team was there. Also have to give a shout out to UCLA. They have beaten a lot of some SoCal teams. They beat Fullerton in addition to beating SC, and they also beat Santa Barbara on my birthday. Glad I didn't go there. Just kidding. And I don't know if I gave them the shout out on the show, but they went toe to toe with South Carolina. They were neck and neck with them through 3 quarters, and then South Carolina turned on the Jets and beat them by 9. But UCLA is starting to become really relevant when it comes to women's basketball again. They were already very good, and then they just kind of had a little bit of a tumble that one year where I think they were like a seeded. I forget what their national seed was, but they just lost in the second round to, I think, Texas. Not sure, though, but glad to see UCLA is back to laying down the wood in women's basketball. And for USC, nothing personal, but they're now about to get into the thick of their schedule and the real toughness of their schedule. They have Texas on Sunday, which should be an interesting matchup. Then they've got St. Mary's, which is over 500, 6-4. Oregon State is 6-3. They've improved. Oregon is going to be really tough. Then they've got UCLA at Pauley Pavilion. Cal is also up there in talent. Stanford is number 2 in the nation. Washington State only has 2 losses. Washington has 1 loss. Utah is undefeated. They're number 13 in the nation. Colorado is 8-3. I think you all are starting to look at the pattern of the Pac-12 in women's basketball. There is not one team that is under 500. So USC, I know they're 9-1. I'm happy they're 9-1. I'm happy they're improving. But now they're about to get into the really tough portion of their schedule. And the Pac-12 is not going to go easy on them. There is no easy rides when it comes to the Pac-12, especially with this much talent. It's crazy, man. That's basically going to do it for all of college basketball. We're going to take ourselves a quick little break. When we come back, we've got to discuss some Lakers and Clippers. They've got some hockey to discuss. They've got some Dum Dums of the Week award to give out. Oh, we also have a little bit of NCAA women's volleyball. Hey, this isn't Set Point. Either way, you're listening to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hey sports fans, do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Wine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all. And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well. Football, hockey, collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it all, and we're going to whine about it all. So join me Monday at 8 p.m. on IU Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Some say that Indiana is just a flyover state. Flatlands and cornfields, barns and country roads. What if I told you Indiana is the crossroads of America? What if I told you in all other states, basketball is just basketball? In Indiana, basketball is life. Crowded high school basketball gyms on a Friday night, and every barn with a basketball rim and a frayed, worn-out net. If you're interested in the heartbeat of America, and if you're interested in sports, if you have Hoosier running through your veins, the Crossroads Pod with Aaron X is made for you. Powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Each and every week, the Crossroad Pod covers all of Indiana sports. The pride of the horseshoe of the Indianapolis Colts. The blue-collar gold swagger of the Indiana Pacers. The relentless pursuit of the sixth banner for the Indiana Hoosiers. The swing of the hammer of the Purdue Boilermakers. The swoop of the Cardinals of Ball State. The summoning of the echoes of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. The growl of the Bulldogs of Butler. The intensity of an Indiana fever. The chop of the Indianapolis Indians. At the Crossroads Pod, if it is Indiana, we've got you covered. More than cornfields. More than country back roads. The crossroads of America. Join me, Aaron X, every week. It's nothing but net.
College football, and do you want to hear a college football show dedicated to all that is college football, including junior college and the CCCAA and the NJCAA, the NAIA, and the NCAA, including Division III, Division II, Division I AA in the FCS, and Division I A in the FBS? Well then look no further. Join myself, Larry B., and my colleagues, Mr. H-Town Blake Henley, and Mr. Christian Espinoza, each week during the college football season for the latest in college football on 3 and Out College Edition, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Are you a fan of Buffalo sports? Are you thinking of changing loyalties and becoming a Buffalo sports fan? Do you even know where Buffalo is on the map? Did you know Canada is closer to Buffalo than New York City? Welcome to the Buffalo Huddle, every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 4 p.m. Pacific Coast Time on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'm your host, Patty Bax. This is a podcast designed for you, the passionate sports fan. I know you love your sports. Who doesn't? I cover Buffalo sports and so much more by bringing in the human elements. I call it Buffalo Sports with a Twist. Join me as we take a journey into the world of Buffalo sports. I guarantee you'll fall in love with Buffalo just like I did. Each week we start with an inspiration, question of the day, a Buffalo fun fact, and our weekly challenge to you, the listener. Come huddle up with me every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 4 p.m. Pacific Coast Time for the Buffalo Huddle with Patty Bax on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. As we say in Buffalo, go Bills!
Back with segment number 2 of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely check out all of our amazing shows, such as Let's Whine About DMV Sports, which is on a little bit of a hiatus, as I want to give a shout to Mike Pat, as his wife just gave birth to their second child. Congratulations to Mike and his wife Allie, and best wishes to you all going forward. Also check out the Crossroads Pod with Aaron X. That talks all things Indiana sports, while Let's Whine About DMV Sports talks all things DMV sports in the Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia area. Also, check out 3 and Out College Edition with myself and Larry B tomorrow at 7 a.m. Imagine it'll be 7 a.m. We have some championships to go over. And we also have the Buffalo Huddle. I also have to give a shout to Patty Bax, who is tuning in. She's not in the chat room, but she is listening while she is at home. And Mike Pat did pop into the chat room. He says, "Good afternoon, sir. I appreciate you popping in." All right, let's get on into the second half of this show. So, we've already talked about college basketball. Let's talk some NBA action. So, it's still been the same thing for Lakers. Well, actually, no. I will say that they haven't been as sucky as before, but they're still not doing as good as most people, as much as I want them to. They lost to the Boston Celtics, which does not sit well with me, losing 122 to 118 in overtime. Now, it's a good thing that they were able to be competitive, but here's the thing. Lakers were down 20 points. Lakers eventually went on this big surge, led by 13 in the fourth quarter. Celtics came back to tie it off of a go-ahead game-tying jumper from Jason Tatum. Lakers still couldn't make their free throws toward the end of the quarter, and then they just fell short in overtime, which it doesn't sit well with me. The good thing for the Lakers is that they ended the Grammy road trip on a positive note as they beat the Detroit Pistons 124 to 117. They did, however, lose to the Philadelphia 76ers 133 to 122, which it was another instance where the Lakers sadly could not make their free throws. They had one player, Austin Reeves, who had the potential of tying the game late in the game, and then he missed the third free throw. Lakers stole the ball. Ball went to Anthony Davis. Sixers fouled AD, and AD made the first free throw, missed the second, and then the Lakers ran out of juice in overtime. So that's basically how the Lakers struggled in their most recent overtime games. So the Lakers finally return home to the Crypto.com arena, where they play the Denver Nuggets on national TV tonight at 7 p.m. And then, funny that Mike Pat is in the chat room, or was in the chat room, his Washington Wizards take on the Lakers on Sunday at the Crypto.com arena. Monday, the Lakers are back at it against the Phoenix Suns. And then Wednesday, the Lakers are heading up to NorCal to take on the Sacramento Kings. And the next Friday, the Lakers return back to the Crypto.com arena against the Charlotte Hornets. So there is that right there for the Lakers. Again, it's just been that type of year for the Lakers. And losing those two overtime games basically describes the Lakers in a nutshell right there. A very, very simplified and horrible nutshell. But hey, at least Anthony Davis is somewhat balling. Like, he's somewhat balling, but LeBron, I think, is kind of what's holding the team back. As Anthony Davis, he had 37 points against the Celtics, and again, he's been playing so great, but the problem is that the Lakers, as a team, they've been playing hideously. I know LeBron had 33 points and 9 boards and 9 assists, but he was 3 for 11 from three-point land. And the Lakers as a whole, they took 29 threes, and they only made 8. Only made 8. Again, as my brother once said back in the old days, three-pointers are a game of chance. And if the three-pointers aren't falling, why in Jupiter's jingle shoot are you continuing to shoot threes? It just doesn't make sense for the Lakers. Like, try to get a layup. Try to get some sort of momentum. Like, don't just haul up threes because you have to. Just get some sort of basket. Please and thank you. God. Over to the Clippers. So the Clippers, they've kind of had some winning ways going on from this point all the way to last show. As yesterday they did lose to the Phoenix Suns 111-95, but the Clippers did not have Kawhi Leonard, and I don't think they didn't have Reggie Jackson. I said they didn't have Paul George, but they didn't have Reggie Jackson, which, yeah, the Clippers they're not going to win that matchup. They will not win without Reggie Jackson and Kawhi Leonard. The previous 3 games, they were successful, as Wednesday they beat the Minnesota Timberwolves 99-88. They dominated the Boston Celtics 113-93, as the Celtics went 1-2 on their little West Coast road trip. Their only win coming against the Lakers, which managed to gift wrap them a win into their lap. And then last Saturday, the Clippers beat the Washington Wizards 114-107 at Washington. Sorry, Mike. But that's a good way to like end the so-called mini Grammy road trip. They went a whopping 2-2 in their little mini road trip as they beat the Hornets off a walk-off jumper. They lost to the Florida teams, and then they beat the Wizards, so there's that. Speaking of the Wizards, the Clippers play the Washington Wizards on Saturday at 1 p.m. Then on Wednesday, the Clippers will remain at Crypto.com Arena to take on the Charlotte Hornets. And then it looks like the Clippers have another, I guess, Grammy road trip. I use that term quite loosely. I think this is their actual Grammy road trip, as they start their actual Grammy road trip on, not next week, but the following week, as they play the Philadelphia 76ers next Friday. The next Friday, they're at Philadelphia, and then they're at Detroit after that. They're at Toronto after that. They're at Boston after that. They're at Indiana after that. And then they return home to take on the Clippers. And then they have another 2-game road trip against the Nuggets and Timberwolves in the new calendar year. But I guess this is kind of their part 2 of their Grammy road trip, as they have a 5-game road trip following their most recent 4-game road trip, which was followed by a 5-game homestand. Mike Pat says Clippers have the best NBA duo that never plays together. That's very true. And he also says, ooh, sounds like a win for the Lakers coming up. I hope so. I mean, at this point, Lakers kind of need something to give their fans some sort of excitement over, but it's not looking too hot. I don't see the Lakers making the playoffs unless, of course, they pull off some sort of miracle. And the Clippers can only go so far as their team takes them, despite the load management and the injuries. But that is that for the Lakers and Clippers talk right there. Jumping on over to the NHL, it's another week of the Anaheim Ducks underachieving, except last night was kind of an exception. They beat the Montreal Canadiens 5-2 on the fourth part of their Canada road trip, as they lost the previous 2 games, which, do I have to say it? The Tuesday, the Ducks got stomped on by the Toronto Maple Leafs 7-0. Yikes-a-roni. And then they lost to the Ottawa Senators 3-0. And then last Friday, in the ugliest NHL game. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. That was... it was last week. Last week, the Ducks lost the ugliest hockey game of the season. They lost to the San Jose Sharks 6-1. They lost to the San Jose Sharks at Honda Center 6-1. Sharks are just as bad as the Ducks, and this just goes to show the Ducks are the worst team in the NHL, and they are most likely they have to be eliminated sooner rather than later. It's just so frustrating being a Ducks fan. I mean, yes, it's probably more frustrating being a Sharks fan, but it's all good. I do need to give a shout, as Mike Pat does mention, that Alex Ovechkin hit 800 goals, and he's just 2 away from passing Gordon Howe, which, good job to Alex Ovechkin. So, yeah. So, congrats to Alex Ovechkin. I know he's not really Southern California, but I do got to give my props to him. He is a living legend, and he's probably going to retire a living legend. But back to the Sharks and Ducks. Yeah, losing to the Sharks was kind of what best describes the Ducks season. The battle of the 2 worst teams in the conference wound up not going to the Ducks' way at home. So, big yikes, Anaheim. Anyway, the Ducks close out their little Canada road trip on Saturday when they head down to Edmonton to take on the Oilers. The Ducks then return home to California, but this time on Tuesday they take on the LA Kings, which is probably going to be a dominant one-sided affair. Then on Wednesday, the Ducks return home to Honda Center to take on the Minnesota Wild. And then next Friday, the Ducks will welcome the Calgary Flames, a part of their little 5-game homestand, 4-game homestand. No, it's an even longer homestand. It's actually, whoa, Nelly. Like, we have 10-game homestand. My goodness. So this homestand goes from December 21st all the way over to January 13th. So Ducks better get used to playing at Honda Center and not disappointing their fans. Just because it can't get much worse for them. I mean, they are at the bottom of the totem pole in terms of the entire league. So, oh no, they're not. I'm sorry. Anaheim is not at the bottom of the league when it comes to the NHL standings. That honor sadly belongs to Chicago, which is just 1 point behind them, and they've played fewer games. Ooh. Still, this is going to be one long season for Ducks fans. Anyway, over to the Kings. So the Kings, on the other hand, they have also had their ups and downs as well. But yesterday they managed to beat the Boston Bruins 3-2. It's always a good win when you defeat the Boston Bruins. So good job to when you beat Boston entirely. But good job to the Kings. Unfortunately for the Kings prior to that, they had a 2-game losing streak entering that game, as they actually won that game in a shootout, by the way. They lost to the Buffalo Sabres, which the same night the Ducks lost to the Montreal Canadiens 7-0. They lost to the Buffalo Sabres 6-0, which is yikes. Yeah, big yikes for the Kings right there. And then the Kings lost in overtime to the Columbus Blue Jackets 6-5 last Sunday. And then last Saturday, the Kings beat the Montreal Canadiens 4-2. So good job to the Kings as they return to action tomorrow against the San Jose Sharks. Like I said, on Tuesday, they have the Anaheim Ducks. They will host the Anaheim Ducks. Then on Thursday, they will welcome the Calgary Flames. Then Friday, they'll head down to the Cactus State to take on the Arizona Coyotes, which will begin the new little cycle system. My cycle system is basically from this week all the way from last week. And then it'll go from this week all the way down to next week. So that's basically that for the Kings. The Kings are definitely doing much better than the Ducks are. The Kings, unlike the Ducks, are actually second in the Pacific Division, which is darn right impressive, especially since they've surpassed the surging Seattle Kraken. So kudos to the Kings. They're actually really impressing, and they're putting California on its back when it comes to the NHL. Just because the Ducks and the Kings the Ducks and the Sharks aren't doing them any favors. So good job to the Ducks, or good job to the Kings. Keep up the good work, and maybe the Ducks can actually learn a few things from them. All right, so that is that for the NHL. So we have a little bit of NCAA women's volleyball to discuss. I'm not going to get too much into it because I'm going to save it for set point for Monday. But we did have an NCAA women's volleyball team from Southern California make it all the way to the Final Four, and that was San Diego. San Diego, for those that aren't following their little NCAA tournament run or that didn't follow their NCAA tournament run, they beat Northern Colorado in 4. They beat Washington in the first round, the round of 64. Round of 32, San Diego beat Washington State in 4. In the Sweet 16, San Diego swept Kentucky, which was darn right impressive. And then the Elite 8 at Stanford, they beat Stanford in 5 sets, which punched their ticket to their first ever Final Four appearance. Unfortunately, yesterday, their NCAA tournament run sadly came to an end as they lost to the number 1 overall seed, University of Texas, in 4 sets. The Toreros took the first set 28-26, and that was darn right impressive, especially since they needed 4 set points to do so. But then the rest of the way, it was just all Texas. I don't think losing that first set deterred the Longhorns in any way, and I'll give credit to San Diego. They came in with a good game plan. They served tough. They were up-tempo in terms of their offense. They tried to get the crowd mostly involved. They even had this ESPN Top 10 play, which was number 1, which was darn right impressive. Like, if you haven't seen that play, then I recommend looking it up. Or I'll probably retweet it on the SoCal Supreme Sports Show Twitter account. But overall for the Toreros, they just could not find that same momentum they had in set number one. Like, set number one, they were neck and neck with Texas. Unfortunately, they just could not, again, find that same momentum. And it's more credit to Texas being such a great team and having so many offensive weapons. I have basically sung my praises about Texas. I kind of picked Texas to win the whole thing on set point. So, again, I'm not trying to backstab San Diego, but, again, San Diego, their tournament run was eventually going to end against Texas. If they had pulled off the upset, then that would have been super duper awesome. But unfortunately, the Longhorns had other plans. So I will give a shout out to Jen Petrie, as she was named the NCAA Women's Volleyball Coach of the Year. She definitely deserves it. The Toreros only lost 2 matches. Once to Louisville early on in the season. I think it was like week 2. And then last night against Texas in 4 sets. And they went undefeated in the West Coast Conference. They had a 28-match winning streak, which was the longest in their history tenure. And then they made it all the way to the Final Four, which was downright impressive. And again, this is San Diego, not San Diego State or UC San Diego Toreros, which is not a Power 5 school, which is downright impressive. That's what makes them making it all the way to the Final Four even more sweet, because they made it all the way and they were not a Power 5 school. And they were the only non-Power 5 school of the Final Four to make it to the Final Four. The other was Texas, which was in the Big 12, and then Louisville and Pitt, which was in the ACC. So, again, a fantastic season sadly came to an end for San Diego. Like I said on the Set Point Twitter account, this team has a lot to be proud of. It's going to be tough to replace the departing players like Brianna Edwards, Katie Lukes, Grace Froling, Gabby Blossom, and the list Annie Benbow. But I think the Toreros are going to have a great future ahead of them. Hopefully, they can replicate their success going forward. I think it would be great to see San Diego being a very competitive team and back in the Final Four. Just because, if you remember last year, for those that know last year, the Toreros actually got stomped on. Well, not stomped. Yeah, well, they got swept in the first round by Rice, which they would have lost to Texas either way. But for San Diego, they came a long way, and they deserve a lot of credit and praise. And again, it would have been so awesome to see them bring home a championship to San Diego. The Stat City kind of needs it, in my opinion. But overall, fantastic season from the Toreros, and congratulations to Jen Petrie on getting Coach of the Year. And keep your heads held high, ladies. You are absolutely fantastic. Alright, so now that that's out of the way, that's actually a perfect segue to get into my Dum Dum of the Week. So, before we head on out, we have to award the Dum Dum of the Week award. So, the Dum Dum of the Week award goes out to someone or any sort of organization that does something or says something dumb. No one is safe from this award. Anyone can get this award, and I actually have 3 awards, Dum Dums of the Week awards, to give out. And like I said, no one is safe from this award. So I have to give out the mini Dum Dum of the Week first, and it kind of has to go to Alohi Gilman, which, well, remember when I told you about him him causing the fumble? Well, he celebrated a little prematurely, and then Tyreek Hill scooped the ball up, which the ball was poked over to him, and Tyreek Hill eventually scored, whereas Alohi Gilman, had he not celebrated, he probably could have stopped Tyreek Hill, but again, that celebration kind of killed it. At least it didn't matter when it came to the Chargers winning, but overall that was a little bit of a silly mistake, so I kind of have to give Alohi Gilman the mini Dum Dum of the Week, but it wasn't as bad as what happened with Jerry Tillery. At least it's not as bad as what happened with Jerry Tillery, where Tillery slapped the ball out of Baker Mayfield's hand and caused a 15-yard penalty, which eventually resulted in the Raiders' demise. But as for the actual Dum Dums of the Week, so the first Dum Dum of the Week goes to yours truly. So you're probably wondering, well, Teran, what did you do this time to get Dum Dum of the Week? Well, I did a couple things that was fairly dumb last week. Well, I wouldn't say last week, but okay, everyone knows that I made the NCAA Women's Volleyball Tournament Bracket Challenge, and I decided to basically let everyone know what my picks were. One of my picks was actually, and this might actually go down as one of the worst picks out there. So I predicted USC would get out of the round of 32, which they did. And then their second round opponent was against Ohio State. So little did I know, and I totally regret this, I picked USC to get out of that little second round matchup. Yeah, I picked USC to upset Ohio State, which, well, USC wound up losing in 3 to Ohio State. They got swept. It was probably not really close after that first set. Like, Ohio State pretty much brought out the pimp hand and pretty much smacked USC around. So, yeah. I really thought USC was going to advance to the Sweet 16 when I know darn well USC they were the most inconsistent team I had pretty much talked about when it came to set point. Yet I thought SC was going to finally put it together and advance to the Sweet 16. Oh, but it gets better. So last week, this is the true reason why I'm named Dum Dum of the Week. Last week, I had a little bit of I had thought that a lot of history had been made in terms of NCAA women's volleyball. So last week, I thought this was the first time we were not going to see a Big Ten team in the NCAA women's volleyball Final Four since 2002. That's partially correct, but not really. So the 2002 teams that made the Final Four back in the NCAA Women's Volleyball Final Four were Florida, Hawaii, Stanford, and USC, all of which were indeed not Big Ten teams. However, back in that decade, Nebraska was actually not in the Big Ten. They were actually in the Big 12. And little did I know, I did my research, I did go back and I did see that USC, Hawaii, Stanford, and Florida were all in that little Final Four bubble. However, I did not know Nebraska, going back and looking at the past Final Fours or past NCAA women's volleyball tournaments, I did not know Nebraska was a part of the Big 12. They were not part of the Big 10. And back in 2006, the NCAA women's volleyball Final Four consisted of UCLA, Washington, Stanford, and Nebraska. And keep in mind, Nebraska was in the Big 12 that year, and UCLA, Stanford, and Washington was in the Pac-12. Was and currently is in the Pac-12. So, yeah, I tweeted that out while tagging 3 other people. However, they were all kind enough not to retweet and call me out saying, oh, you were wrong. Eventually, I found out, and I basically had to make a follow-up tweet saying, hey, I was incorrect. I didn't know that the Big 12 had Nebraska in it that year or in that decade. So I basically did what I normally advise everyone to do, not assume. And in my defense, I didn't know that Nebraska was even in the Big 12 at that point. But I should have checked a little bit closer. But either way, for my mistake of thinking that Nebraska was in the Big Ten, and for prematurely tweeting out that the last NCAA Women's Volleyball Final Four that didn't have a Big Ten team was in 2002, instead of actually looking a little bit closer and seeing that Nebraska was in the Big Ten instead of the Big 12, I definitely deserve Dum Dum of the Week, and I need to do a little bit more job of closely investigating. So, for my false information and for me tweeting it out and jumping the gun, I am this week's Dum Dum of the Week award recipient number 1.
You are so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
Yeah, that's my bad. I felt really silly after that. But at least, I guess it could have been worse. I guess I could have predicted Texas to lose. I'm just kidding. There's no... I mean, I could have easily deleted the tweet, but then I basically had to be a man about it and just put up a follow-up tweet and say, I made a mistake, so, again, fully and thoroughly check everything when it comes to checking your facts. All right, now for Dum Dum of the Week number 2. So, as we all know, security is there to be helpful for us. Security is there to be helpful for us and to protect us. That was not the case for this big figure when it came to the Los Angeles Clippers. And that being Clipper Darrell. So sometime last week, Clipper Darrell, I don't know what he was trying to do. I don't know what he was doing, but surveillance caught him getting knocked out by a security guard. Yeah, I'm not kidding you. Clipper Darrell got knocked out by a security guard, which... Now, I don't know what happened. I don't know what Clipper Darrell said to get knocked out. As a Laker fan, as much as most Laker fans wanted to laugh at this isn't funny. You can't just knock somebody out just because, for some reason. I don't care if you're security or not. Unless Clipper Darrell had a weapon, which he clearly did not have, he should not have got knocked out. And that's just poor. I'm not trying to be judgmental on this or stir up pot, but that's just poor judgment or just a poor job of what the security guard did. Like, he should not be punching out people. Like, that's just not good. And it basically gives the incentive that this guy could have a vendetta against Clipper Darrell or something along those lines. So, I don't know what the security guard was thinking. I don't know, maybe Clipper Darrell said something to, like, trigger him. I don't think he would have said any... I don't think Clipper Darrell is that type of person, though. Like, Clipper Darrell, he's one of the nicer guys out there. Yes, he could be a little obnoxious to Lakers fans. Well, not too obnoxious, but yes, he's a pest to Lakers fans. But the dude's harmless. He would never insult anybody. Like, the dude just wants to see the Clippers win a championship. Now, again, there could have been some sort of, like, disagreement. There could have been some sort of rule that Clipper Darrell had. Maybe Clipper Darrell somehow, like, did something wrong to, like, trigger the security guard. But there's no way a security guard should knock out somebody like that. Unless Clipper Darrell was armed, there is no reason a security guard should be knocking out Clipper Darrell. And I do not condemn anything of what that security guard at the Crypto.com arena did. So my prayers and thoughts go out to Clipper Darrell. I hope this never happens to him again, and I hope he has a speedy recovery. And for the security guard that basically caused a lot of fear and caused a lot of mischief, and for knocking out my boy Clipper Darrell, you are this week's Dum Dum of the Week Award recipient numero dos.
You are so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
Security guard didn't even deserve that Kawhi Leonard laugh. Alright, so that is that for Dum Dum of the Week number 2. Now, Dum Dum of the Week number 3. This is the coup de grace of Dum Dum of the Weeks. Oh boy. So, this one is a recurring Dum Dum of the Week award recipient. And I actually had another Dum Dum of the Week award recipient, but that guy doesn't even deserve the fact of being Dum Dum of the Week. That other one, he will not be talked about, but let's just say he said something which is very derogatory, and let's just say he ragged on a football player who said his offense, an NFL player who said his offense was not good enough to win a Super Bowl. I'm going to save that for later. But for this Dum Dum of the Week, this is a recurring Dum Dum of the Week award recipient, as this man stepped out of bounds when it came to his little show right here. So as we all know, Skip Bayless says some pretty crazy things. He says some pretty wild and questionable things that should not be said on public television. Well, little do we all know, this was a different side of Skip that we all saw unleashed on Undisputed. So I think this was on Monday where Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharpe were obviously having their discussion. And Skip Bayless, I guess, is a Tom Brady defender. But here's where I think he took it a little too far. Skip Bayless decided to... I don't know exactly what he said, but he decided to bring Shannon Sharpe's age into this, as he said, not quote unquote, but paraphrasing, Shannon Sharpe you're just jealous because you stopped playing football at age 35, while Tom Brady, who is 45, is continuing to play. Yeah, I'm not kidding you. Skip Bayless said to Shannon Sharp's face, you are just jealous that at age 45 Tom Brady is still playing, while at age 35 you are currently not. Okay, there's something you never, ever, 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 ever want to do if you're a man, and that is bring up someone's age. This really had Shannon Sharp hot, and Skip Bayless was continuing to interrupt Shannon Sharp, and he was just going crazy and ballistic. This might be Skip Bayless's all-time low when it comes to things he does stupidly or says things stupidly on Undisputed. Just because you can't just say Shannon Sharp is... You can't just bring Shannon Sharp's age into this just because he's not playing at... He stopped playing at age 35 while Tom Brady is playing at age 45. Like, that's just stepping out of bounds, dude. Like, where's your credibility? Where is your professionalism? Why are you literally bringing Shannon Sharp's age into this? And Shannon Sharp is a big dude. He played tight end. Tight ends aren't always going to be playing forever. I don't even know how Tom Brady is playing forever. Like, this dude follows a strict diet. Like, of course the dude eats like one almond a day, an Activia, probably a cup of Activia or anything of that sort, and he has to maintain a strict diet. Like, I don't know what Shannon Sharp's diet was back in his day, but again, this is just a different decade, dude. Like, you really just can't just say that. Like, that really offended Shannon Sharp, and I was surprised Shannon Sharp just did not go after Skip at that point. But I give a huge round of applause to Shannon Sharp for keeping his composure to the best of his ability. But for Skip Bayless, for him bringing up Shannon Sharp's age, and for him saying that you're just jealous that Tom Brady at 45 is still playing, while at age 35 you had to stop playing, you are this week's Dumb Dumb of the Week award recipient.
You are so dumb. You are so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
And that, my friends, is all she wrote. I really think Skip Bayless is starting to become the Dumb Dumb of the Year. I really maybe should have an award for that. Have Dumb Dumb of the Year for someone who says or does some of the dumbest things out there. But I think Skip Bayless is definitely going to earn that honor of Dumb Dumb of the Year. If not, I could maybe give that to someone else. But on that note, that is going to do it for this week's episode of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. It is that time we get on out of here, because in about 2 hours, we have the Carolina Cast going on with John Felipe. Ya dig? Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. I really do appreciate you all tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, or anytime, anyplace, anywhere, I appreciate you. Shout out to Mike and Pat, who joined the chat room, as well as Marcus Lewis Gray and Patty Baxter, who was listening. I really do appreciate you all tuning in. Really appreciate my IE Sports Radio family, no matter what. For everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. You all have yourself a great rest of the weekend. Remember to be nice, just because Christmas is on the horizon and you don't want Terran Claus to give you the Dum Dum of the Week award for Christmas. Well, until then, you all have yourself a great rest of the week. I'll be back next week for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show, and I will for sure be back on Monday for set point to wrap up the NCAA Women's Volleyball Tournament and all that good jazz. But until then, have yourself a great rest of the week. Enjoy all the SoCal sports action, and I'll see you Monday for set point. Have a great week, and remember, SoCal is for SoCal. Peace!